Another tanker fire, more deaths again. What is the solution to fuel tanker fire in Nigeria? Dr. Amadi joins me in the studio to look at this disturbing trend. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight. Here again, we're back talking about explosion. About 2 weeks ago, we talked about the one that happened in Niger State, and now we're back again. But the question is, have we really learned any lessons from the past incidences?
We've not. I mean, the one that happened in Niger, perhaps too recent to learn a lesson. But the previous ones, this is not the first time we've seen repeated incidents of this nature. So we've not learned much lesson because, again, we're not a country that learns lesson, not just with accidents. You see, most of our tragedies and calamities are repetitive. The same pattern, no mitigation, because lessons is not about, talking about them or governors showing forth as Governor Ba has done, responding, maybe providing support to those who are injured. Lessons about reconfiguring how you do things. So, for example, what is this? I've not seen it. That's not been in the last 10 years. There's no significant regulation about road transport. So that's first thing to think about. Regulations around how to carry flammables, regulations for National Assembly or state assemblies on how to, manage logistics in terms of the frequency of accidents, and the fact that we don't even have quick response capabilities. Even if they do, the instrument oftentimes to deal with this, at least to minimize casualty, is we don't have that. So the first thing is that we've not learned these lessons, and it doesn't look like we can, because the institutional response, it's institutional response. It's not about individual grief. It's not about maybe analysis is good, but institutional response of first, does this frequency and this number of deaths, do they register in policy consciousness that this is real tragedy? You see, the way we look at this way, we may feel that this is a tragedy. We look at the number of, but the government system is so encumbered, it's not responsive, and therefore, you won't see the government go to work on Monday with a draft, thinking around what do we do immediately. First, analyze what is the cause, establish a scientific, research report around these accidents, and then that triggers major policy, programmatic legislative efforts to mitigate, prevent, but don't do that. So we've not learned any lesson. And I'm happy with the governor's approach to this matter in terms of, he said, look, even if the federal government does not do these roads, we will do them. The set of roads in the southeast, I apply that road regularly, is very bad. And if you look at accidents, either reckless driving, which is cultural attitudinal, but oftentimes bad roads, navigating, maybe instead of dual road carrier, we use one lane, many bad spots, and then these articulated vehicles or these big lorries carrying flammables, if they miss one or two, and then there's some kind of accident, they hit somebody, not just the accident, but the inflammable material would cause a conflagration. So I think that beyond the fact, look, we are losing too many people, and this is, the Nigerian state is notorious for either killing or not even caring about death. That's really the point. If we care about death, then the response will be, you see the response, and in a few years, you see that frequency is reduced. But we mourn over this, but the machinery of policy making is not paying attention, and therefore not really worried, and therefore not going to work to say, okay, how do we manage our bad roads with these inflammables? Do we create a different rule? Do we create some, so that these operators will internalize preventive, precautionary measures and use them? What really is this all about? And what can we do in the circumstances of bad roads that would take a lot, maybe a period of time to get done? And again, the other point is about the state of bad roads. Now questions, why should we spend so much on perhaps the so-called Calabar, Lagos, coastal road, if we really need to get down to repair and fix, in-country roads or interstate roads?
I think we should dwell more on policy and regulations that you talked about earlier, and you said we've not seen much of that in the last 10 years. Where do we need to begin the conversation from? The guys at the National Assembly, or where do we start the conversation? Should we take it to the doorstep of the National Assembly to say, look, we need to kick-start conversation around regulation of how these inflammable products are transported?
We can do two ways. I mean, it's a regulatory issue ultimately. So sorry, it's regulatory. It's also legislative. So, for example, there was a work we were doing when I was chairman of the Senate Technical Committee on the transport sector, and we talked about National Transport Commission. Now, that's both air, water, road.
Right.
Now, you need to have, but of course, politics killed that, so they didn't quite set up the body. But again, there are the road transport, the Ministry of Transport has section that deals with road, Ministry of Road has section. So, but that interagency collaboration should first sit back and begin to think around how do we deal with this crisis. Number two is the National Assembly and, of course, state legislatures. The problem is that maybe this honorable member will raise a motion and the motion will be passed, reported, and that's the end of it. The degree of legislative rigor required, and this is where we talk about science, research-based methodology for lawmaking. So if the National Assembly, for example, says, we are worried, and then there's a bill, for example, or a proposition by an honorable member senator, then it should go back to a social science research, saying, first, these accidents, what causes it, and some of these causes, how are they embedded in social practice, embedded in our demographic, embedded in our culture, embedded in our structure. So you have to have a scientific sense of what caused what. They will sit back and say, how can we control? So that's the work of legislation. But the problem is that the way the National Assembly functions is cut and dry. So you go there, raise this motion, it's passed. Then they write a motion, send it to maybe to the executive branch, and so that we should do something. Nobody follows up with doing that thing. So our politics really is a problem because it's not responsive to human tragedies. And therefore, because there's no political penalty for failure to deal with these issues, there's also no political incentive and no political rigor for officers, the road owners, to sit back and authorize action. So there are clever guys in this country who can write a bill that would address this problem. But the political will to get involved and stay involved is low because, look, nobody will lose their job because of this. The governor, if this happened 10 times in Enugu, for example, the governor will lose his job. The Minister of Transport will lose his job. All the people who are involved, what were done in terms of regulation, nobody's going to lose their job or even lose election. The public memory of tragedies is very loose. So nobody carries that. So, okay, this government failed us. We lost 300 people who shouldn't have lost. So next election, we're not going to vote for them. So then it means that a virtuous, benevolent, technocratic class, which is the legislator, the governor, somebody should take responsibility and put people together and address these issues and then take them on to passage in the law or take them on to regulatory closure by relevant regulatory agencies.
I think that's very critical. But let me take you back to what the Minority Whip Senator Ositangu said, calling for a state of emergency on our roads. I think we also need to look at the state of Nigeria's roads, the state of infrastructure across the country, also been set to contribute to this as well. Again, we also aware that part of that road is being funded through the MTN tax credit scheme, and I mean other projects will have been abandoned as well. So how do we break this cycle and ensure real change? Because at the end of the day, this project or this infrastructure have been, in one way or the other, have been awarded, but there is no real change. We're not seeing completion, fast forwarding of this completion, and it's been over 15 years. We heard that this particular road, the Nightman, and that particular section of the road is been under rehabilitation. Okay, so to that before I let you.
Sure. If you do look at the audit, so if first thing, somebody should have a report about these roads. Right. So when you say 15 years, how many awards have happened? How many mobilizations? So what you see that the road infrastructure business in Nigeria is a scam. So roads are awarded repeatedly. First, the cost of per kilometer, however you measure it, is more expensive here than everywhere. So you've got to do two adjustments. One is at the level of prudence, so that the limited funds we have can actually do many more roads. The road project, bridge project, these are all part of money laundering scam that politicians use to make money. That's why you see the award roads. Two is that we need to also see the point that the roads are important for three reasons. One is that they are part of the drivers of economic development. The reason why you don't have a lot of inbound economic growth in terms of households, community wealth, is that the road as enabler is weak. So government has to prioritize roads, not just the fancy big roads, but also this more important rural, interstate roads. That's the second adjustment I have to do. So, and then again, we need to come out with maybe a road transport policy and fund, kind of fund. Now, the idea, MTA is good that the corporate Nigeria is coming in, but the question, the lack of transparency and the award of these roads contracts is a problem. So I think that somehow we need to admit that we've not done well in the last many years about road. If you look at many developed countries, even the US, part of the first thing they got in their founding fathers got right was road, interstate. And that's why offenses, they call intercommerce offenses, road offenses involving interstate are dangerous, are serious offenses, because the road is the artery and the engine of economic development for any developing country or developed country. So I think that we should come back to say, look, we have to fix the roads. And to fix them, we have to fix them prudently. And therefore, that means we need to put greater than required transparency. This is where EFC should be focused on. Not just after 8 years as governor, it's about award. And again, I want to come, Mr. President, let's set up this procurement council now. The scam, the corruption around road business in Nigeria from PDP era to APC era is mind-blowing. If we use our resources prudently, we are going to cover many kilometer roads across the country. And if we don't fix our roads, if we don't reclaim about 60% of these abandoned roads, we don't have reasonable expectation of well-grounded economic development. Forget what the World Bank tells you. The road is critical. Getting the roads right. Look at human capital, hours wasted. Look at loss in terms of constrained economic transactions. Look at human life. So from a both economic, from social, and from human rights perspective, these roads, their state today of dilapidation is a national crisis and should be declared emergency, not verbally, but let it reflect in prudent management, in funding and delivery project management.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sam Amadi, Director, Abuja School of Politics and Social Thought. Thank you for your time on Newsnight.
Thank you.